Welcome, friends, to Eden Seminary's Day 2 of Spring 2021 Convocation. We are so glad you have joined us. I'm Deb Krause, President of Eden Seminary, and I'm here with my colleague, Steve Lawler, who is the Director of Eden's Walker Leadership Institute. We are so happy you are here to join us for our convocation entitled, "This is What Theology Looks Like," celebrating ministries of resilience and solidarity and Eden's membership in and for the progressive Christian movement. It's great to be here with you this morning, Steve.
It's great to be here with you and all the people who have joined in. We see the conversation unfolding already in the comments. It's exciting to be at this point. Eden has been a gathering place since its very beginning, and this new gathering that we're imagining and beginning is a gathering of leaders of progressive religious movements who fit our continued discoveries about what it means to be collegial and how we can work best together to do this important and critical work, and especially as each day shows us that there's more work to do. It fits very well with the Walker Leadership Institute's commitment to leadership for the common good and Eden's commitment to interfaith collegiality. And so we're excited to be here today. You're going to get to hear a conversation that Deb and I had with James Croft, which was remarkable. And we're looking forward to having you join in this larger conversation as we launch this initiative over the next couple of months. And I know, Deb, you have some really wonderful and powerful things in your vision and your imagining for this work. And this is a great time for you to share them with the people who are gathered here.
Well, thanks, Steve. And I am just so grateful to have you as a colleague in this work with the wonderful resources and vision of the Walker Leadership Institute, bringing the important domains of business and faith together for the common good. And really out of that space in the programs area of the seminary, we have dreamed up a collegium of interfaith colleagues who share progressive, religious, non-religious vision and purpose, and a commitment to work together for the common good. And so over the next months, we're really looking forward to sharing these kinds of conversations with the broader community of leaders here in the St. Louis area who bring that interfaith progressive vision of collegiality, collaboration, solidarity for the common good. For those of you who are joining us today in the Zoom webinar, we welcome you and we invite you to keep it up. You're doing really well in the chat. Continue to greet one another. This is reunion time, and we encourage you to do that. And feel free to make comments in the chat as well on the program, on the conversation that we are about to share with the wonderful leader of the Ethical Society of St. Louis, James Croft.
And we encourage those of you who are joining us in Facebook land to do the same, to greet one another, to enjoy this time of being together, and also to share comments and reflections as we go along through this and now remarkable interview that we'll be able to share with you.
And so afterwards, Steve and I will join you back and we'll offer some recap and hopefully be able to engage some of your comments both on Facebook and in the Zoom chat, and offer a brief recap before we end the session. And for now, enjoy this wonderful conversation with James. Welcome. I'm Deb Krause, President of Eden Seminary, and I am delighted to be gathered in this conversation with James Croft, who is the leader at the Ethical Society of St. Louis, and Steve Lawler, who is the director of the Walker Leadership Institute at Eden Theological Seminary here in St. Louis. And we are coming together to have a conversation as a sort of inaugural moment to be thinking about how we're drawing together a collegium of interfaith leaders, progressive interfaith leaders here in St. Louis for the common good. What we're going to do today is have a conversation about that concept of interfaith collegiality in the progressive religious movement and in progressive religious work and spaces. And James Croft is an awesome person to have a conversation with us about. We see you in the streets, we see you on social media, we see your publications, your podcasts, your collaborations with so many people. And Steve Lawler, our colleague at Eden Theological Seminary, who directs the Walker Center. Steve, the work you do in leading the center as a center that works at the intersection of business and faith, really drawing on the resources of those domains to empower leaders for the common good. Walker Leadership and Institute and Eden Seminary are creating an interfaith collegium, a collegium of colleagues from all over the St. Louis area of different faith traditions who are committed to progressive religious witness and work.
Great to be with you and with James. The work of the Walker Leadership Institute, which is about 5 years old, came with an idea that there was this place that could be richly explored where leaders who were faithful people may, in fact, probably could share a lot with leaders of other kinds of organizations about how best to have those organizations be a powerful impact for the good of all, for the common good, and that also the center might be able to provide people who are doing really missional kinds of work, really important kind of progressive work, would benefit by some of the basic tools of business management and leadership. And so I often say we don't teach accounting, but we certainly help people understand how all that works. And we don't necessarily get in the business of telling people how they're going to preach, but we certainly have a lot of ideas about the focus of our common good and our common challenges. So the exciting thing about the Collegium is that recognizing that there are people in our community doing amazing work, and that work is contained in the midst of their tradition, but also in the midst of their relationships and their collaborations. We thought, great idea to see if we could convene a group of people and have those people in the midst of our conversations with them, and then our engagement with the community, be a continued presence and force and activators for the kinds of things that common good and the progressive religious traditions that we represent are most committed to. So, doing the work of really being about racial equity and doing the work about intersectionality and things that are really even, in the last couple of weeks, more clear for us in terms of the variety of ways that violence is enacted on people who are othered and situated, not in a way that we would say is an expression of the common good, but situated in places of oppression. So this has been an exciting conversation, and it's great to be able to start here, and especially to have James as the person that we're having this initial conversation with. And I know, Deb, you have done a lot of thinking about how all of this fits in the kind of larger sense of Eden's mission and purpose.
I've been excited to see how the seminary's infused goals, what we call the infused goals that really run across all of our programming, which are a commitment to resisting the kinds of forms of oppression and violence you were just speaking to. We are an institution committed as a part of the progressive Christian movement to resisting white supremacy and all of its intersecting oppressions, racism, sexism, heterosexism, ableism, colonialism, and doing that because we're called to with interfaith collegiality, doing that with people of different faiths, people who may not claim any faith at all, but doing that work on behalf of the common good, and doing that, and this is the final Infuse goal, with something we call vocational resilience, the capacity to move platforms and shapes, not to understand that that's going to happen in the same institutional shape and form all the time. And so interfaith collegiality is a sort of core leadership capacity that we are working in all of our programs, from our degree programs to our non-degree programs to the offerings of our community and our common life. We're really trying to bear out how to empower people to learn how to become colleagues, how to become friends with people of different faith traditions, so that we can really be about this work together and be empowered together and learn together in this work. Delighted, James, to be able to welcome you to thinking about this concept with us as a leader of the Ethical Society of St. Louis, as a leader in the ethical humanist tradition. How do you think of interfaith collegiality? How have you experienced it in your leadership, in your service?
First, I just want to thank you, Deb and Eden, and you, Steve, and the Walker Leadership Institute for your invitation to be involved in this. Since you asked me, I've been thinking a lot about that term interfaith collegium, because collegium is not a word that you hear a lot nowadays. It's kind of got an old worldy feel to it. And I absolutely love that. I think that it's a wonderful word. And I've been trying to think why I like it so much. And also like why I like college campuses so much. And I feel like there's something about that term collegiality. I've been in a lot of interfaith partnerships. I've been in some interfaith fellowships, which has a bit of a kind of male, kind of, patriarchal feeling about it. But the word collegium, the idea of people coming together to be collegiate, to learn from each other, to be professionals together, but also in a friendly, positive way. I think there are so many good resonances to that word, and I just wish we used it more. So one thing that really kind of struck me was this is the perfect term for people who want to learn from others, not always agree with them, because professors on a college campus don't always agree with each other about things, but they're committed to a common enterprise, a common good of learning and working together and creating a particular type of growing community. And so I love everything about this, Deb.
When you think about how you've experienced this region of St. Louis in relationship to being a leader of the Ethical Society, being an interfaith colleague, how have you seen this evolving in this context, and how do you feel you're a part of that?
I came to St. Louis in June of 2014. And as you know, and many people will know, August 2014, Mike Brown was murdered and the Ferguson uprising happened. And there was this huge interfaith response. I remember going to the first national march in Ferguson, which was just huge. I mean, thousands and thousands of people there, but also a lot of religious leaders from many different religious traditions present. And also to an organizing meeting that Susan Sneed and MCU, Metropolitan Congregations United, put on, which was like that first meeting where they kind of summoned clergy, and there were tons of people there in the space. I mean, just tons, including a lot of people who I never saw again, by the way, but there were tons of people there. And honestly, that work defined my whole first year or even 2 years in St. Louis and as clergy. Like, I was finishing my training as clergy. We do a year-long apprenticeship essentially under an existing clergy person. So I was literally learning how to do this work on the streets of Ferguson, in the streets of St. Louis, alongside other clergy fighting against racial injustice. And I didn't necessarily imagine that was how I was going to be inducted into the life of a clergy person. I didn't know that it would be so intensely activistic. I'm not sure if that's a word, but so much intense activism. And I didn't know it would be so intensely interfaith, because I had no concept that I'd be thrown into this movement, where, you know, we'd be kneeling down and doing prayers in the middle of the street, you know, and stuff like that. But I think it was possibly, no one would choose for that sort of event to happen, and to have to go through the things that many people went through to be part of it. But if you're going to learn how to be a public representation of your religious tradition, your philosophical worldview, then that's an incredibly powerful way to learn, to work alongside people who don't necessarily share all your metaphysical commitments, but who share a common commitment to the common good.
I think about how personal that time was, and yet how global. So you talk about that march where there were thousands and thousands of people there, and the purpose was massive, fighting structural racism and how it destroys Black lives, and yet so personal around the life of this young man, Mike Brown.
That's such a powerful way to put it. And it certainly matches how I experienced it in terms of just these enormous moments, like the huge rallies and the big, you know, march downtown. But also I think of moments when, just after a particularly difficult time in one protest, going back to Rabbi Susan Talvy's house and just sitting in a circle and talking about it. And I'm not Jewish, you know, but for that moment, she was my rabbi, right? And she led me through that and helped everybody present heal. It didn't really, I don't want to say it doesn't matter what people believe, because it does matter what people believe. And I don't like it when it says, oh, we all fundamentally believe the same thing. That's not true. We do have considerable and important disagreements, but it wasn't particularly significant in that moment because we were there for each other and for a common purpose. And so there are so many of those, as you say, public and private moments. The Ethical Society, an ethical society is a congregation that was developed actually to be an interfaith space in a very particular way, in that we're non-creedal, so we don't ask our members to sign any particular statement of beliefs about anything, or to become a member, you don't have to have any particular theological beliefs or metaphysical commitments or anything like that. But the center of the community is ethics and a commitment to human dignity and to promoting a world in which everyone's dignity is recognized. And initially, the founder of the first ethical society wanted it to be a space where everybody could come together regardless of their religious views. And so it really was, I experienced it as an expression of what I think is the best potential of my tradition. I really felt often that these are people coming together, religious, not religious, many different religious traditions and denominations and sects all represented, but focused on a single cry, which in that moment was Black Lives Matter, but is in another moment is Trans Lives Matter, in another moment it's Me Too, and you know, it can, whatever it is. And I don't know, it has made me think differently about how I do my work within my own congregation as well, because we do tend to become a place where a lot of atheists and agnostics make a community because there's nowhere else for them to go, right? So, and if you are a Christian or Jewish, you know, you probably will find a community that represents that. So over time, we aren't really that interfaith a space in practice, but it makes me think about, well, are we really doing it right? You know, I would like to be a space where you can have everyone come together. So it hasn't just enabled me to think more broadly about how to do the public witness of ethical humanism, whatever that term means in our tradition, but also how to relate to my own community. So it continues to be a formational set of experiences.
One of the things I think about this kind of collegium idea is that
and you mentioned it earlier, on the same campus, but maybe not in agreement about all things. And so part of this process is going to be us discovering together what are those commitments that we share and have passionate commitments expressed in the work that we do. And so I know that these interviews that we're doing, these conversations that we're doing, will be an introduction to some people to a richer understanding of the particular places and spaces that members of the Collegium come from. And so you've said several things that are really helpful and rich and clear about what it means to come out of the ethical society, the history and the tradition of that. Are there things that you've found as you've had this, sort of dynamic and intense experience of formation in the time of the Ferguson uprising after Michael Brown was slain and all of the things that went on that you found to be even more compelling about the tradition that you inhabit, even more that you celebrate, that you are deeply grateful for as you live in it?
People don't think about humanism as a tradition. Many humanists don't even think about that they are entering into a tradition of thought and practice. I wanted to make more humanists aware that this is a tradition. You don't, it's not just, oh, I'm done with organized religion, now I'm a humanist. There is a positive tradition of thought and action there that includes a lot of commitment to social justice work, that actually when you read humanist writings and you read about the history, there are a lot of people who have done some remarkable things. And you find things like, Jim Reeb, who was killed during the civil rights era, who was a Unitarian minister, was a Unitarian humanist minister and a total atheist, right? And he was very open about that. And I didn't know that. And I needed to discover his theology, his atheology, whatever term you want to use, and how he was motivated to even give his own life for a cause, given his philosophical commitment. There's an idea there that there's a positive set of commitments and a tradition, a history of people trying to articulate and live up to those commitments, just like the great religious traditions. Depending on how you draw the history, it can either be quite a short history or a very, very long one. People tell the story of humanism in different ways. But I feel like one of my roles is to tell that story and say, this didn't just start with, this isn't Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris publishing a couple of books, 10 years ago about why everyone shouldn't believe in God, and that's it. That's even not part of the story. The story is the people who found in themselves, in philosophy, wherever they found it, a commitment to human betterment and improvement that guided their life. And that's really what I want to promote. It's not so much a philosophical thing. It's a life stance and a commitment.
We talked about this Collegium as a group of people who have very different perspectives in some ways, but some similar kinds of commitments and experiences. And I'm wondering if there are 3 or 4 things, maybe 2 or 3, that you would say out of your experience, both in the context of welcome to St. Louis and the intense period that was for you, and also your 10, 12-year journey so far, that you see as kind of essential pieces of doing this kind of work. Because one of the biases I guess I have is that we do a lot of reflection about the work, but the work is actually much about doing and then about reflecting, not sort of getting our minds right to get in there and do everything in the sort of certain way.
I think first that it depends a bit on your own positionality relative to the issue. I wrote an article some time ago when I was kind of deep in the Ferguson stuff that said basically white people who want to be involved in that work need to, I think it was, turn up, shut up, and keep up, which is basically go to things, do what people tell you, and don't expect to take a leadership role unless you're explicitly asked to do something, and keep up your commitment because it's easy to drop off. But that I wouldn't necessarily give the same advice to someone else who, like me, is a gay person working on LGBTQ issues, right? Because then I think I can speak from my own experience in a more direct way and say what I think should happen more openly. But I think that you put it really well when you said, Steve, that you have to kind of dive in, that actually spending a lot of time getting your mind in the right place before you do the work can often become an excuse not to do it, because our mind is never in the right place in a certain way. And I do worry sometimes that a lot of these programs that are all about kind of self-reform and getting your brain in the right place and thinking the right thoughts, they kind of substitute for doing things that will actually help people in the marginalized communities that you're trying to work with. And I certainly have found that actually organizing alongside other people, marching alongside other people, protesting, getting locked up with other people, that really helps, build relationships. You will make mistakes, and you have to be humble enough to accept, oh, I made a mistake, I screwed up, I'm sorry, I'll try not to do that again, because you will do it again, because we all will make mistakes. And the community has to accept when people make mistakes, that they're able to reform themselves and come back. And I don't like communities that just kick people out and are done with them when they make a mistake. That doesn't fit with my idea of my humanist commitments, at least. But I think you do have to engage in the work with a learning attitude. And that was really hard for me, Steve. I think that I know everything. And I am pretty sure when I go into any room that I'm the smartest person there. I've been like that since I was a kid. My parents will tell you the same thing. I have the incredible drawback of having degrees from Cambridge and Harvard and a lot of academic awards and fellowships and prizes and publications and things. So I am very convinced of my own intellectual superiority. So me taking a position of, I don't know what the hell is going on, and I don't need to be in the front of this. I just need to be present and listen and do what people tell me, was incredibly difficult. And I'm pretty sure I failed hard in the first couple of those meetings, where I was like, well, I think what we should do is this. And everyone's like, okay, new British white person, which no one knows. But I think that the key thing is to keep being present and keep being willing to learn. And luckily, I love to learn. And I cannot say how much of a learning experience it has been to work with other interfaith colleagues in particular. You do need sources of hope and positive regard from people around you. It sometimes our activist communities in particular can be really quite judgmental and even rather mean and self-righteous. And I recognize that because I can be self-righteous too. So I see it when I see it, I'm like, oh, I recognize that tendency. And that is a problem because it does stop people learning and people drop out. And you do need to be welcoming to people, not endlessly, but to give people spaces where they can make mistakes and grow and become a better version of themselves. And there is a maxim from the ethical humanist tradition. We don't have 10 commandments, we don't have kind of rules, but the founder of the movement came up with what he called the supreme ethical maxim. His idea was act so as to elicit the best in others and thereby in thyself. And what I like about that principle is that firstly, it's a positive ethical requirement, right? It puts a responsibility on me to act in a particular way towards other people. Secondly, the way I'm supposed to act is a way to bring out the best in them. And that is a empowering notion of ethical relationships. And thirdly, the idea that when you are doing that, when you are being the sort of you that brings out the best in those around you, that is the best version of you. Right? I think there's something really profound about that insight. And I try and hold on to that in these interfaith spaces, in these challenging spaces. I often fail. Like I am so bad at I tell my congregation all the time, I should not be doing this job. I'm aware that I very infrequently live fully up to that ideal, but you just got to hold on to an idea of how you want to be in a space like that. And when you're surrounded by thoughtful people who really live out their creeds, like Deb is an example of this. Erin Cunahan, who did my wedding, she's an example of this. like so many people, Rev Sekou, who I remember going to Rev Sekou's trial and being like, this guy is incredibly inspiring. So many people like KB and all these people who I know just through this work who inspire me by totally living out their own traditions and religious philosophies. That helps me be better. I have to say, one of the reasons I'm really excited for the Collegium is that I haven't found that many spaces for progressive clergy in St. Louis, particularly to work together on all the justice issues. One of the things that has really frustrated me is that every space has issues they work on and issues they will not touch. And honestly, mainly it's like the LGBTQ stuff that they will not touch. That's been a challenge. How do you be collegiate when around the table are representatives of traditions who say you shouldn't be able to get married? Like, I shouldn't actually be able to be married to my husband. Or, you know, the Catholic Church recently did its statement, a recent statement about gay people, and that's me, right? And there's representatives who I love. You know, I love the representative of the Archdiocese on the Interfaith Partnerships cabinet, but that is something they wouldn't allow for other areas of. I just feel like they wouldn't allow a group to make a statement about, you know, people with disabilities or something that's so explicitly phobic or oppressive and then just be a part of the group. And so I've struggled with that. And I feel like, well, am I really welcome here? And how do you navigate that? I am looking forward to a space where I can bring all of myself, because that is very difficult in interfaith spaces. So many spaces, there's a lot of really sexist, homophobic, transphobic religious traditions out there, including some really big and powerful ones. And they seem to be more willing to say things like, oh, women can't be priests, you know, or play a leadership role in our community, or gay people can't get married here, things like that, than they would be willing to say something explicitly racist, for instance. I'm not sure if that's true, but that's been my experience, that the reaction to that sort of prejudice is different. And that bothers me. That really bothers me. So I'm really looking forward to what you're creating.
Thank you, James. We are looking forward to it too. And for the ways, this conversation has sort of initiated the beginning of the Collegium. And I think a couple of things you shared really give evidence to the capacity this space we're creating can have to not only encourage each other and empower each other and learn from each other, but perhaps to amplify and elevate the progressive religious witness and voice. We can be a collegium who can really learn from one another and therefore empower one another with that knowledge to move together in ways to really what I hear is a powerful second point you've lifted up or insight you shared, which is that progressive religious leaders have always had a reason to be. But I think we know we're in a season, we're in a moment, we're in a time in our national context, certainly in the global context, and here in the St. Louis region, to take all the risks we can, to put ourselves in spaces, to risk sharing with one another, maybe making mistakes, create that opportunity to say we're sorry and do better, be a community that can do that, and amplify the progressive public witness of faith. Thank you for joining with us in this conversation, for sharing so richly and powerfully out of your own experience and out of your own tradition and leadership. And can't wait until we can assemble together physically and be about this work together.
Yeah.
And we'll enjoy the sharing of our other colleagues as we are able to host these conversations and produce them. Well, welcome back. Steve, wasn't that a wonderful conversation with James?
Oh, extraordinary. And it was richer the second, third time through. I imagine watching it some more just because there's so much there. It was also great to see the conversation that was going on in the chat space. We were talking about a collegium, and there were people sharing resources with one another and contact information and ideas. And so not only does this reside in the particular place of the collegium, but it's something that people are really lighting up to. And that's just exciting and right in the spirit of this whole idea. So just great stuff.
Yeah, really looking forward to the upcoming conversations that we will continue to share with the broader community via Zoom and Facebook Live, and the opportunity, as I said at the end of that conversation, to come together physically and really be about the work of the St. Louis region, interfaith, progressive faith witness for the common good. So thank you so much for everyone who attended. Thank you especially for Dr. Croft, who shared with us in this conversation. We're really looking forward to the next steps in our convocation journey. There's in the chat a form for your reflection and your evaluation of this forum, and we really would appreciate getting that back from you. And here up on the screen are the events for upcoming forums in our convocation celebration. Just mention the next few real quickly. Tonight, I am so excited and honored for the inauguration service of me as Eden's 14th president. And it really is going to be a celebration of the entire Eden community. And more than that, really, our whole network of colleagues, friends, congregations, collaborators, a whole array that our colleagues have prepared this beautiful service of worship. And I'm so excited with the Reverend Dr. Valerie Bridgman of Methesco, who is the Dean of Methesco Seminary in Ohio. And we are just delighted that she will be bringing the word tonight in the service, and really looking forward to all of the service as a celebration of this seminary and its membership of the progressive Christian movement. The next events after that, Wednesday, again, chock full with opportunities. Our wonderful colleague who went to Oregon, to Willamette University, and has been there for about 10 years, who's been busy publishing. Dr. Steve Patterson, professor of New Testament, who is coming to us live in a forum, a lecture, really connected out of his newest book, the Graumeyer Prize-winning book, which is entitled The Forgotten Creed. And the title of that lecture is All Children of God, Rituals of Solidarity Among the Followers of Jesus. And this is really a beautiful Bible study for our theme this convocation. We're so excited that Steve is honoring us by coming back for the Brueggemann lecture. And in the evening, we'll convene at 5:30 for a forum with Reverend Tracy Blackman, who is the Associate General Minister of the United Church of Christ, an Eden alum, and our current pastor in residence here at the seminary. And Tracy will be reflecting on congregational partnerships and collaborations for solidarity and resilience. And boy, is this a rich forum with 4 different congregational partnerships modeled around responding and engaging with needs in the community. And really an opportunity to see how congregations are moving now with the Spirit to find new forms of ministry and new ways of being the body of Christ in the world. So that will be a wonderful forum, followed, as all of our forums this week, by an opportunity for alumni reunion. So Steve, we're excited to look forward to the work of this Interfaith Collegium. And we're so grateful for everyone joining us. On behalf of Steve, thank you so much for joining the session, and enjoy the rest of your day. Hope to see you back at 5:30 tonight for the inauguration service.
Thank you.